Welcome to Long Run Lactic, a running media concept devoted to cultivating, documenting, and curating the beauty of finding fitness. From the infancy of our first steps to the conquest of a race won, we all have a story to tell. I'm your host, Bernard England, and on the show today, I have the esteemed pleasure of sitting down with Vanessa Fraser. The former Stanford Cardinal was a 7-time All-American before moving into the professional ranks in 2018, signing with Nike and joining the Bowerman Track Club. Over the years, Vanessa has put up impressive PRs. Over 3,000 meters, Vanessa has run 8:51, an impressive indoor 5K PR 14:48, and most recently, a half marathon in 71 minutes. However, today, Vanessa discusses recent changes made as she became a member of Team Boss and is now coached by the one and only Joe Bosshard. Also, we discuss her recent change in sponsorship from Nike to Saucony. All this and so much more. Let's get into it. All right, we are here at Sunset in AZ, Scottsdale, here with now Team Boss's own, right? This is officially Team Boss member, Miss Vanessa Fraser. How are you?
I'm doing well.
How's
Pretty
camp
much
going?
Nowhere else I'd rather be.
That's right.
Living the dream, yeah.
How's the transition to Team Boss life? I'm not gonna say I'm biased or anything, but they are the best group, so it is what it is.
Yeah.
How's your first Team Boss camp been?
It's been great.
Yeah?
It's been so much fun. Yeah, because this is my first time getting to train with everyone in person. I technically joined back in September and have been working mostly remotely with Joe, so it's my first experience.
The boss man himself.
Yeah. Which has been great. He's like an incredible remote coach. Not everyone can do that, but he's so communicative and will fire text back and forth like after every workout. Within a span of 5 minutes, we've had a whole conversation. Right. So efficient. But yeah, so that's been great, but also very great to finally train with everyone and run with everyone. And, that's the reason why I wanted to join a team like this, is to be a part of a big group of really fast women.
Yeah, the camaraderie aspect, and got a lot of good, fun personalities. A lot of people that want to just have a good time, but also everyone's there to just get better. And make each other better.
Yeah.
But before we even get there, background. So you're a Stanford grad.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful Elise. She's on the team now too. How's it been like navigating this transition with her as well? Right? Like I feel like so many other members of the team, they come in just kind of on their own. Some come with another member of a certain team, but it's been kind of nice to kind of hear, hey, this person's coming, but another person's coming, and we both know that they're beautiful people, right? Mm-hmm. So how's it been like working with a good friend of yours and seeing that transition for her too?
It's been awesome. I think like even if Elise hadn't joined the team at the same time and we were on different teams, I think I would still feel like we were going through it together in a way, because no matter what, we probably talk on the phone like every day for about an hour on average, like maybe 6 days a week, but almost every single day we talk on the phone for about an hour.
Bestie life.
Yeah. Like somehow we finish the phone call and it's like, oh, yep, it was an hour again this time. I don't know how that happened, but we always seem to get there.
Like you didn't just talk the day before.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think in a way it's like, even if she wasn't on the team, I would feel like she was so involved. We pretty much know everything there is to know about each other and each other's lives and everything that's going on currently. But obviously it's just an added bonus that we're doing it together and that we're on the same page and, can just continue to support each other in our careers. I think we've both had such different paths, even going back to high school, but also at Stanford, we had such different paths. Yet at the core of it is just sort of this deep understanding of what this experience means and what the highs and lows have been for each other and just being there for each other through all of it. So I don't know. It's really special to get to share.
It seems
with her.
I can only imagine. It's already, I don't want to say stressful, but you're apprehensive, right? Like change is just different, whether it's good or bad, you don't know till you're in it. So it's nice from afar to see like they definitely are good friends. Like they're actually like, you don't know. The only thing you hear is like, oh, they went to school together. But like for me being here, you can see like No, they're actually, first of all, each person's cool, so it's just been fun for me to get to know you guys. But like, it's nice to see like real friends like be real friends with each other. So I can only imagine like what those phone calls are like every single day.
I mean, I think we're just so genuinely invested in one another, and as cheesy as it sounds, it really does feel like my success when she has success, and vice versa. And I feel that way with every teammate, but just on another level when you've been through everything and shared everything together. So
let's back up. Let's start from the beginning, from infancy. Who is Vanessa Fraser, the youth girl from Santa Cruz, California? What was your running background? How'd you get into the sport? How'd you find how to pick them up and put them down? What was that like?
I started running in 3rd grade formally with Girls on the Run. But even before that, I was a little bit of a horse girl. I always had a fascination with horses. That's right. You guys went on horseback rides. Yeah. So that was kind of my original passion.
Did you think you were going to just follow that all the way through?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily have any big aspirations to be like at a competitive level or anything, but I loved it. I loved riding and loved horses, and me and my friend back in like 1st grade would use our recess time to pretend to be horses, and we would like gallop around the playground, and that's what we did during recess. So nerdy, but so that was like kind of my original running, was pretending to be a horse. And then started formally running through Girls on the Run in 3rd grade and ran my first 5K, and just immediately fell in love with the process of setting a goal and trying to get better, and that self-improvement aspect and kind of the you versus you aspect, and was terrible at a lot of the traditional ball sports like soccer, and it just, the hand-eye coordination was not there.
That wasn't your thing?
So I kind of found my thing, like, okay, I'm pretty good at this. I really enjoy this. I enjoy the process of it. But there was always this one girl who would beat me at the end of the season 5K races. And so I wasn't the fastest.
Was this high school or?
Girls on the Run, like elementary school. Yes.
What's you can say her name. It's okay. She won't remember this.
That was Danielle. Danielle Davenport.
Danielle Davenport, if you're listening,
shout out.
But you birthed an animal. That's all we're gonna say.
Yeah. That ignited the competitiveness, I think. I think there's nothing like losing to motivate you. Yeah. It's one thing to always be the best, but if you just get your ass handed to you over and over, that really gets the fire going.
It helps when you're in 3rd grade and it's like, nobody want to go back and watch TV. So.
Yeah. And then I just continued like through middle school and high school, and became more specialized once I got to high school. That was sort of my only thing that I was focused
you were more of a cross person, I would say, right?
Yeah.
So like, why cross? Like I could tell you 100,000% much more invested in track than I ever was in cross, especially in high school. Like the only reason I even touched cross country is because my best friend's dad, who was also like our track coach, said, you're going to practice. So we just ended up at cross country practice. But
right.
Why cross? Why not track like everyone else and then come to cross? Like there are some people out there that are like, no, cross was always first for me.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, probably the main reason is that I was better at it. Yeah. And, you gravitate toward what you're good at. And I just naturally had a really good engine and not as much leg speed. That's always who I've been. So the track events being capped at the 2 mile, I was better at the 5K, and the 5K is what we ran in cross. But I also think the team element of it, I always really enjoyed. And obviously track has the team component too, but
nothing like cross.
Yeah. Just to be in a team race and to all be lining up together.
And practice for cross is like the camaraderie aspect of that. And for me is like second to none.
Yes.
I don't even know if there's any debate ever for that. Like I just feel like cross country camaraderie, cross country teamwork, which makes sense that you're now on a team that really like is very similar to that cross country lifestyle, where it's like everyone is kind of in the same race, the same goal kind of thing. I'd never thought about that until right now. It's like, that's probably why you like cross country in the end.
It probably is. Yeah. I will say I struggled to find my stride as much in collegiate cross country, and I probably had more success on the track, and so naturally maybe enjoyed the track a little bit more. But again, there's no replacing the team element of cross.
Now, how did that transition come for you? Now, I know like you were a walk-on, right? Like you went to one of the best schools in the country / the world in Stanford from an athletic, but also from an academic standpoint. So when you knew you wanted to keep running, why keep moving, right? Like if you're not getting that scholarship up front, what was your motivation to I'm just going to walk on and figure this out? Like where did that come from?
I always wanted to go to Stanford since I was first grade, probably. I grew up not too far away, had a cousin that played football there in the 90s, so some of my earliest memories are going to games there. My dad went to Stanford, and he would always have Stanford sports on, so it was just really ingrained at an early age. I was a fan of Stanford athletics and just decided that was the ultimate pinnacle to strive for. And so I think once I have my mind set on something, I have a really hard time letting go of it, as most athletes do. And that was my thing. That was my dream. That was bigger than any dream that I ever had. So I was like, I'll do whatever it takes, to get there. And I was technically a preferred walk-on, so I still had help with admissions, just no scholarship money.
You were the person walking in with the authentic vintage clothing.
Yeah.
You didn't have to go buy it. Your dad just, you wear this one. It'll look a little cooler.
Yeah. I think I counted by my senior year of high school, and this collection spanned from like third grade through senior year of high schow. I had like 35 articles of Stanford clothing.
Really?
Between like sweatshirts and hats. And I mean, I was a super fan. I had the track team sign a t-shirt of mine one time at a meet. I had the football team sign a t-shirt of mine when I was, quite a bit younger, but wow. I was like mega fan.
And what was it like walking on? Obviously, just in the few moments we've had together, you can tell you're a very determined individual. But what was it like going onto a team where everybody else kind of got scholarships, right? Like they had already proven themselves, so to speak. How did you feel like you had to prove yourself immediately? Did you think like, I'll just wait till like time comes and I'm a little older, a little bit more mature in terms of like running, and I'll wait till that time comes? Or did you already know when you got there, I'm going to be the best as soon as possible?
I think it's kind of a balance. And for me, it was the perfect balance of, I want to get better. I want to prove myself. I want to earn a spot on the top 7 for cross eventually. And I believe I can get there, but also feeling really no sense of pressure or expectation on me when I first got there, which I think is enormously beneficial for a college freshman. I kind of, I was good in high school, obviously, but I wasn't a superstar. I never went to Foot Locker or Nike Cross Nationals. I never was a national caliber high school athlete. And I kind of have a lot of empathy for athletes who go into college with that resume, because I think it's a really heavy weight to carry on your shoulders as an 18-year-old going through all that transition. So I feel really lucky that I was in this position of sort of nothing to lose, nothing to prove, yet so much to gain. Yeah. And I had that motivation. And I think, it just allowed me to be patient with it, which is kind of what I've learned throughout my career, is you have to find ways to buy yourself patience, because it's just never good if you're in a rush to prove yourself.
What do you think is the best agent to teach yourself that, right? Like we were having a conversation before we started. Failing is usually the best agent to kind of motivate you to be better, right? Mm-hmm. Like what is the best agent to teach you patience? Because I think for most people, that is probably one of the hardest lessons you have to learn just in life in general. Yeah. But you learned it. So like, what do you think? Like obviously I think by your junior year, you're pretty solidified. Like I'm here, I'm doing this, I'm one of the best on the team. But what do you think like got you there? Was there a certain workout? Was there a certain year? Was there a certain thing over a summer where I'm focused on training this summer? I'm focused on all my mileage. I'm focused on lifting. Like, was there any one thing that said, I'm going to get myself there?
My coach, Coach Milt, had some pretty honest conversations with me freshman year that I think pushed me in the right direction about just what it takes to be good at that level, and how important it is to be trying to get 9 to 10 hours of sleep a night as an athlete, and that's really difficult to do in college, and you have to figure out your priorities and your time management to be diligent about your sleep and your recovery. And it's like, that's not something I ever thought about in high school. That's just you're
a kid.
Yeah, you're doing homework. You're like trying to get good grades so you can get into
Sleep
your dream school or whatever. But exactly. So kind of like learning those basic lessons of being a good athlete, and just being around people who were doing it at a high level, like Jess Ton. I mean, she was honestly one of my original role models at Stanford because she was a senior when I was a freshman, and just looking at what she was doing and being inspired by what she was doing and thinking, okay, if I kind of emulate the way she approaches things, maybe I can get there too one day.
Jess is tough.
Yeah.
Jess is tough.
Yeah, she's legit.
Jess is tough. Like, even when you don't, like, I didn't know Jess until I jumped in a workout with her, and without saying a word, she's very sweet. You don't really think it's coming, and then all of a sudden, when that timer starts and the gun goes off, it's like, oh, this is an animal standing as you. This is, it's one of those kinds of things I love that energy, but it catches you off guard because she doesn't come off like that when you're having a conversation. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you switched it up on me real quick.
Totally. Yeah, it's like what our college coach, Coach Milt, used to call Emily, because he was Emily Infeld's coach back at Georgetown. Mm-hmm. And he would say, yeah, like, she's a stone cold killer. You would never know it on the outside, and then you get in a dark alleyway and she will tear you up.
Yeah, man. That's another person. I just said to McGee earlier, I really like Emily. Like, every time I see her, she's the sweetest person in the world. But man, how she races and who she is as a person, they don't match up. Like, she's
stone cold.
Yeah, man.
On the track.
Locked in. It's beautiful to watch.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Now, as you progressed, you obviously turned into a Stanford legend, in all honesty. Multiple-time All-American, got a few records. As you got older, as you progressed through that running career, did you think you were going pro? Did you know you wanted to keep continuing that? Or because you were an outstanding student as well, right? Like, what you studied, is it
symbolic systems.
I have no clue what that is technically. I understood that you had a focus in neuro. Love that. As a bio psych person, but what was the symbolism part? What was the symbolic systems part?
I mean, I don't even really know what the title means, but it's essentially a combination of computer science and psychology. Mm-hmm. And the coursework also spans linguistics and philosophy. And I think what it means is sort of, symbols are what we use for language, and how do we represent different thoughts and communication via language, cognition, computation. It's pretty vague and esoteric, really.
But it also sounds like there were very few easy days in class. So
yeah.
It sounds like you were very disciplined in that aspect too. Like, did you want to continue like a research path? Did you want to continue just down science in general, or what was your outside of running path, or outside of running passion?
I never really knew exactly what I wanted to do career-wise. I sort of picked the major just because I thought it was really interesting, and right. I just wanted to follow what I was most excited to learn about. And I think there's a lot of different directions you can take the major. But honestly, like, for me, not the end of the road, but like the ultimate dream was going to Stanford, and I was living out that dream. And I was like, I don't know what's next, really. I'm just enjoying this, and I'll figure it out, once I get to that point. Yeah. But I think I decided I wanted to go pro by 2017, which is my senior year. And I ended up doing a fifth year, but that was my first U.S. champs outdoor. I went to USA's that summer in 2017 and finished 7th in the 5K and got really excited about what I could do at the next level. And I think also seeing Jess and our other teammate Ashley Cuff, who was a couple years older, seeing them go pro really inspired me and excited me, like, oh, this is a legit path. I never even knew what pro running was up until that point.
What was it like, what are you, the early 20s, living out your dream, Stanford, young, just life is all a blur, life is all just coming to you, having to choose a brand to jump onto? What was that process like? Like, how did you know up front, like, granted, it's Nike.
Yeah.
It's the sexiest you could possibly get.
Yeah.
But how did you know you wanted to sign with them versus like any other team, right? Like, how did you know that was your decision?
Well, I was really excited about the prospect of joining Bowerman, and at the end, it came down to either joining Bowerman or Team Boss, and it was a really hard decision. And back then, I think Team Boss was Emma, Aisha, Dom, and I think Corey joined maybe later that year, but she wasn't on the team yet. And I think those are the people on the team who are still on the team now that were there back then. And I visited Boulder and I stayed with Emma and Joe, and was really drawn to what they were building. And then on the other hand, was very enchanted by Bowerman, and I think that was really the height of Bowerman women's team coming off of the 2016 Olympics. Like, that was just magic.
It was everywhere. They were the poster children of all sport. It was not. It was the sexiest thing you could see.
Yes, and I thought, wow, to have an opportunity to be a part of that would be really cool too. So it was a really hard decision, and ultimately decided to go with Bowerman, and now I'm lucky that I get to come full circle and be a part of Team Boss now too. But yeah, I think just that pull to be with that level of excellence, and Sean McGordy was joining Bowerman at the same time, and he was one of my best friends in my class at Stanford. And so kind of, again, that excitement to go through it with someone that you know so well, that you've been teammates with for 5 years. I was equally close with Sean and Elise at that point, I would say, and Elise ended up joining 6 months later. But yeah, to go through that with someone is just a pretty cool and rare opportunity. Yeah. Like, what are the odds that you get to do that with one of your best friends?
And, like we said earlier, still do it.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. It's amazing.
That is. It's, in all honesty, I think 10, 20, 30 years from now, you'll still be able to look back and say, wow, that still hasn't been replicated. There's not many people in life that get to go through that journey over and over.
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah.
From a running perspective, how were your Bowerman years performance-wise, right? Like, I think for you learned a lot in those early days at Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
And you, unlike other pros, you had to fight for a lot all the way through your entire collegiate career, but especially those first 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
You really didn't become the runner we kind of know you as today until that senior year. So what was it like transitioning into an era where now you're on a pro team where everyone is at the top of the top?
Yeah.
Right? Now everyone's kind of doing everything perfectly. Everyone knows the ins and outs. They're ironing out all the details almost daily. What was that transition like?
It was definitely intense, and everyone talks about Jerry's training and the Bowerman training, especially right out of college. It's really hard. So I think from a physiological adaptation standpoint, my body went through it just like everyone else when they first joined the team, and you're just hanging on for dear life in workouts. So that sort of training transition was difficult, but I think the mental transition was actually very similar to my time at Stanford, where I'm coming in and I think it's this underdog mentality where I feel like I belong there. I believe I belong there, but instead of feeling like I have to prove myself, it's sort of like I feel like I have nothing to lose, and I'm just, every time I line up to work out and to race, it's only something to gain. And that is really great for my mindset. Like, that works really well for me, and I think a lot of people. And I would say the first year and a half at Bowerman was just as hard as it was certain days, it was pure bliss. It was so much fun. I'm surrounded by these people that I've looked up to in the sport for, years, and I get to train with them now, and it's sort of like you have these rose-colored glasses on that everything's going to work out, and, if I'm here, I'm going to become an Olympian, and I'm going to achieve all my dreams, and you're just filled with all this, like, youthful hope and optimism, and yet this underdog mentality that, maybe not everybody's like, I didn't win an NCAA title in college, and there's no one that's expecting me to do that stuff, but like, I believe I'm in the right place to make it happen. And then I've talked about it a lot, like my big breakout race with Bowerman in February of 2020, I run 14:48 indoors, and like, in a way surprised myself, but also like, I had a feeling that was coming.
Yeah, you showed it.
And I was like on top of the world. I'm like, I'm going to make an Olympic team. Like, I'm just building this momentum. And then obviously, like, the Olympics get postponed. I get surgery on both my Achilles. But I still feel like I have all this momentum and optimism that it's going to work out for me. And I'm going to come back a year later and I'm going to make the Olympic team. And obviously that didn't work out, and that's just the way it goes. But I think since that point, it became a lot harder to like build momentum for myself. And then all of a sudden you feel like, well, I've already set this bar that's so high, and now I'm sort of just like trying to get back to that point. And I just had trouble like building that momentum the next couple of years, and I got a glimpse of it in June of 2022. I ran 15:05 outdoors. So I thought, okay, I'm getting back there. I'm like climbing back the ladder again. But it's so different. Once you've already reached a certain level, then you have that expectation for yourself. And I kind of got a glimpse of what it's like to be on the other side of like the opposite of the underdog mentality. And it was really hard for me.
Do you think that's something necessary? Do you think going through that point where you got to that high and then kind of almost getting to a point where you're going towards the low, do you think it's a necessary agent for you to figure out what gets me over this hump? Right?
Yes.
Like, I think so many professional athletes experience the same thing, right? They get to a point where it's like, oh, I've got it. I figured it out.
Right.
Okay, maybe I didn't figure it all out.
Right.
And then now they go back to the lab and they figure out, like, what do I need to tweak? Like, to me, from the outside looking in, that's the era you're kind of in now. And you can kind of see like, okay, she's fine tuning and tweaking to go back up, but mentally that just seems exhausting.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how do you switch a gear to keep motivating yourself?
Yeah.
Because after injury, you had every reason to just say, okay, I'm stepping away, right? Like, you already have, in my opinion, what will be a promising career academically. You can go outside and do whatever you want to do. Like, still young, still can go figure out everything outside of the track. Like, what's that motivating factor for you that says, no, I'm gonna keep scratching until I don't have this itch anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I would. Well, it's hard to say, but I think having seen a glimpse of what I'm capable of and seeing how fast I can run and knowing what that feeling was like, where I felt like I could have gone out a couple weeks later and run even faster. I mean, it's just this feeling like where you're on top of the world with your fitness. You feel indestructible. Like, every runner knows that feeling where you're just like, man, I'm hitting all these insane workouts and I feel unbreakable and just aerobically so strong and fit. And getting that taste has just kept me coming back for more, because I'm thinking, if I was able to do that at 24 years old, and who knows exactly when my exact peak is, and it's different for the longer the events go, of course, but I'm thinking there's got to be more in there. If I had that feeling at 24 years old, there's got to be more. And I think that's what keeps us all going at the end of the day, is like, how good can I be? And if you get a taste of a little bit of how good you can be, it kind of it draws you in more.
It does. I would definitely say that.
But it's been mentally tough to figure out, because I think it's this search for that feeling again, and just this experience of my body kind of rebelling a little bit, and having to go deeper in those little tiny low-hanging fruits, and like, how can I get a little bit better, and how can I get back to this feeling, and why is my body just seeming to not respond, and just so many things to figure out. It's almost like I don't think it's an age thing. It's just for whatever reason, there's just more mysteries to figure out. So it's mentally exhausting, but also
the journey continues.
That determination, you just can't put it to rest.
Where do you want to see yourself this year? Right, like we're with a new team. Well, technically Joe's been there for a little while. A lot of change is coming. A lot of change technically has just happened very recently.
Yeah.
But where do you want to see yourself at the end of this year? Like, obviously it's an Olympic year. We all have aspirations for that being the biggest goal. But from a mental standpoint, if you don't want to put this out in the ether, but say we don't make a team, like what's that thing that you want to get back to mentally? Like what's that, like, you already have a drive, you already have discipline, you already have determination. Like what's that thing you want to make sure by the end of this year, I want to be at this point. I want to be able to say, like, every day I'm going to be able to hit this thing.
Mm-hmm.
What's that for you?
Well, in simple terms, it would be to just kind of really find my groove again. Yeah. I think I've been a little out of my groove, and to find my groove, I mean, not just mentally, but really physically. Yeah. And I think when you're in a groove physically, then you're mentally pretty good. Yeah. So, and that was what Joe and I talked about when I first started working with him back in the early fall. Because I was actually at a point where I was considering running the marathon trials. I had a qualifier from the Houston Half last year, and it would have been my debut to open up at the trials and run my first marathon. Because I was in this mindset of, I kind of feel like I'm banging my head against the wall a little bit with the track and just struggling to feel like how I want to feel.
What's your event? Like, do we even know, like what it to you? Like, I can look at any standing I want. Like, what is your event?
Well, it's been the 5K.
Right.
That's definitely, like, historically been my best event. And that's, I think, what Joe still thinks is my best event right now. And so the conversation we had ultimately was like, I could be a good marathoner one day, but it's probably going to take me a few cycles to really train into it. It's not like I'm a natural Molly Seidel coming out the gates type of athlete, like crushing, literally crushing the first marathon. That's just probably not me. So not to say I couldn't become really good at it, but I think I kind of agree with that, and just my natural abilities have always seemed to be in that 5K distance. But where my weakness is I've never had closing speed, and that doesn't mean you can't go win a 5K. You just have to run it differently. But in this day and age, with how competitive it is and how much depth and speed there is in the 5K, it's pretty hard to do well. Like, it's just objectively on paper, really, all the events are. But if we're talking about the 5K specifically, it's really, really hard as an athlete like me, like my style of running. Because everybody who has finishing speed is also just as strong, if not stronger. So I don't necessarily have that edge that I maybe had in college of just being a stronger runner. So that being said, when we talked about our vision for the year and my goals and how hard it's going to be at that level in the 5K, especially this year, it really came down to, like, let's just make the goal and the vision to literally, like, find my groove and feel like myself again, and to kind of remove that timeline of, like, having to be ready by the trials. Obviously, I want to be ready to go at the trials. I want to do well. I'd love to make a team, but that's just not what it can be about for me this year.
Well, I'll put it this way. History and your track record shows that once you say it, you're pretty much going to go at it. And looks like you usually attain your goal. So I wouldn't bet against you is all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say there. But
I appreciate it.
Is there a middle ground? Could you go, instead of 5K and pushing off marathon for a few cycles, could the 10 just be the happy medium?
Yeah, it could be. I don't have a lot of experience with the 10, and I've had some negative experiences with the 10, and then some, like, decent experiences, but I definitely haven't nailed one before at this level. So I think it's something I'm open to, but just not as familiar with. Yeah.
Well,
it's a really long time to run on the track too.
You ain't got to tell me.
But again, like I said, I mean, if you're good enough at something, then it becomes enjoyable. So if I can get good enough, I'm sure I'd enjoy it more.
All this takes is one. Well, there's the 10 Sound Runnings 10. Was that March 16th?
Mm-hmm.
That's Corey's wedding.
I know. It's gonna be some conflict.
Shout out Corey. So some exciting news. We are making a change.
Yes.
We're putting away one article of clothing, or like at this point, this stage of the game, many articles of clothing,
yes.
and pulling out some new articles of clothing. Do you want me to say it? You want to say it? I don't want to be the one to drop the news, but where are we going? Why are we? I don't say why, but where are we? What brand are we going to?
Yeah, so I just officially signed with Saucony, and I'll be with them for at least the next few years. And I think it's a really exciting part of my running journey, in that it's like I just joined a new team and now I'm sponsored by a new brand, and there's just this feeling of a complete fresh start that I think is really revitalizing as an athlete, and sort of that little mental click of, I don't know, not that I'm starting at square one, but like I can turn a new page here, and this is a new chapter in my career, and there's a lot of excitement with that.
Do you feel like this change is something that will be the ignition, right? Obviously changing teams and changing coaches is probably the biggest thing you could possibly do, right? But I feel like adding this, to your point, it's really making you turn hard left and say, now my focus is 150%. Not to say it wasn't before, but now it's like, hey, I've got more people or new people to kind of back me.
Yeah.
We were talking a little earlier, it's like Saucony's a different brand than Nike, but I do like the fact that you might be more like involved, right? Like you might just be more covered. I've never had I've never been told a bad experience with Saucony, so I personally love it. But from your perspective, like what do you think will happen this year differently than happened last year for you?
I think part of it is just a very minor mindset shift of I think when you're sort of like grandfathered into a team or a contract, and you've like already been with someone for a few years, and you're just kind of like there because you've been there, versus when you sign a new deal with a new partner and you start working with a new coach, it's sort of like this symbol of their belief and investment in you. And it's like, they're not doing this just because we've been doing this. They're doing this because they really believe in me. And I have always had belief in myself, but that has always been fostered and built up by other people believing in me. So it sort of feels like this symbol of, there's these new people who didn't know me before, we don't have a prior relationship, and they're coming in and saying like, we're buying stock on you now. And like, we believe in your future. We're not just like here because we've been here. So
spoken like a true bunch of capitalists.
It's symbolic in a way, but there's like a lot of power to symbolism, I guess, going back to my major.
I thought about it.
But it's true. And I also think, there's just some cool and exciting new opportunities with Saucony. They have a lot of commitment to their performance and innovation, and it's a smaller company, so sometimes that can allow for things to be a little more nimble and individualized. And I'll get to go out to their lab and test multiple different shoes to figure out what I'm most efficient in, and what, I have the best VO2 max in, and things like that really got me excited about what we can do with this partnership.
Do you feel much like the transition into Bowerman and into pro life, where you came in every day knowing, hey, these are the battles I have to face and I'm going to attack them and I'm going to prove it? Do you feel like this is a new proving ground? Do you feel like you have to prove yourself all over again and prove yourself to this new wave of individuals that are supporting you now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a little bit, but in the positive way,
Right,
not in
right.
the, you know,
Yeah,
like trying to live up to expectations.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, that youthful energy of,
you
know.
seem excited. That's
Yeah.
why I asked. Where it's like, this is you. Oh, in my opinion, you can always tell a person's energy when that change is coming. Where it, I don't even know how to tell. It's just you sense it. And to
Mhm.
me, I can feel like she's hopeful. She's optimistic,
Yeah.
and even more importantly, like she's very excited to fight. She's
Mhm.
very excited to prove herself right. Like even in the midst of doubt. So
Yeah.
that's why I asked, because you've already gone through periods of mental doubt, right?
Mm.
So now for you, it seems like, man, I think I'm really going to prove myself right this time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I think change can be hard, but it can be so powerful because it allows you to reinvent yourself in a way. And yeah, just start anew.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Off the track, you have a wonderful life. Benchmark, VC life. Why, where, like as if training to become an Olympian wasn't, stressful and challenging enough. Why jump into the venture capitalist world? Why jump into Silicon Valley? Well, technically you're already there, living there,
Mm-hmm.
born there, but
Mm-hmm.
why do more? Like, why want more? Now, granted, I already know the answer to this because I just in moments we've spent together, I can see what type of person you are. But why want more? Why aren't you just comfortable with just like, I'm going to follow this? You could have easily waited till your running career was done and retired and then gone after that.
Yeah.
So why now? Why did you think it was the right time to kind of jump into that life as well?
I would say what it really came down to, like going back to the idea of patience,
Mhm.
is I was starting to get to a point where I was struggling to be as patient as necessary to be a good runner. And I think I reached this point of you have to want your goals really badly. But I think there's a line that you can sometimes cross where you're almost like desperately grasping for those goals in a way that's not healthy, in a way that will break you down too much if you don't reach them. And it's a hard balance because I think there's a lot of power in being all in on something, and I live that life, and I am a firm believer of going all in on your goals and dreams. But for me, where I was at and just sort of like being in this rut and plateau with my running and wanting it so badly to be going better, the realization is I'm not going to get there by like desperately grasping for this thing. I'm going to get there by being really patient. And I think letting my body do this on its own time, like every time I've had success, I've wanted it, but my body has sort of just like magically turned a corner in training when I was least expecting it. Like all of a sudden things start clicking and you can't really explain it. You've been grinding with your head down and nothing's really changing day to day. And then all of a sudden you just turn this corner and see the light and your body just starts clicking. And you're like, I don't know where that came from. And I think similarly, when you're going through periods of your body sort of like fighting against you, you don't really have control over it all the time. You have control over your effort and putting in the work and doing all the things each day. But I firmly believe, and you can like try to finesse all the little things and figure out what's going on in your blood work, et cetera, but sometimes it's just, you don't have control of the timing. And I realized I needed to find a way to buy myself an endless amount of patience. And I look at Jess Ton right now, and she inspires me a lot in how she has been able to create that for herself. She stepped away from professional running and created a life that she was really happy and fulfilled living outside of running. And now all of a sudden she's running the best she ever has. She's the healthiest she's ever been. She's the happiest she's ever been. And everybody's journey and story looks differently, of course. But I think for me, I was at a point where I felt like I needed to expand my life in a different dimension in order to buy that patience element with my running. So the job was actually very serendipitous in its timing. I wasn't looking for it. I got recruited on LinkedIn from a recruiter, and I like barely even checked my LinkedIn messages, but for some reason I opened it up one day and I saw the message, and it's this role in VC. I've always had a fascination with VC since going to Stanford and being immersed in Silicon Valley. It's just sort of the culture there. And seeing a connection between entrepreneurship and distance running, you know, the long game, and talk about patience and resilience and pivoting. And so have felt a connection to that. And I just thought it was an exciting opportunity to explore another interest of mine, and hopefully in the process buy myself some of that patience.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I love every piece of that. And I love the Geston plug, because like I told her on the episode, she embodies what I love about this year's Olympic, the Olympic trials in general, but definitely like the marathon, where there are so many different types of individuals on the line that come from all walks of life, but even more importantly, pros and individuals that are working 9 to 5 that day, racing that night, and then going right back the next day. And that brings up the question of like identity. And it seems like so many runners specifically, especially I would say distance runners a lot, suffer with this sense of, I'm only a runner. I can only make everyone happy around me if I perform well. I can only be a good runner if I do 120 miles a week, right? Like I can only be a good runner if, you know, my 100 is under 10 4 times a year, right? So do you think that was a part of it? Do you think like the identity factor is like, you know, I'm so focused on the goal, I'm so focused on being good that it becomes, I'm not a good person unless I perform well. I think that's a struggle that every person's going to have, whether you're a runner or not, whether you're a professional or not, whether you're an athlete or not. But so many of us in the sport just fall victim to that identity crisis, where it's like, I am not a good person unless like I perform well. So how did you get past that, right? Like obviously you took the job and it seems like it's going well.
Yeah.
But how do you juggle all of that? Because now you have to, I don't want to say prove yourself, but you know, there's something they ask of you, and you're a dedicated and disciplined and determined person, so you're obviously going to live up to that expectation. But does it make it easier to have that balance, to have something where on this side of my life in the day, it's like, I can focus on these goals, and then now on this side, like, do you feel like you have more balance now?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm lucky that the job, I took it with the stipulation that I was still going to be training at a high level. So I have a lot of flexibility with it. I think it'd be a lot harder if I was working 9 to 5 in an office every day, which, like, major kudos to all the marathoners lining up who do that. I genuinely, like, the teachers and those in the medical field, it is so impressive and mind-blowing to me. And yeah, I'm certainly not at that level of work hours, but for me it's a great balance and great level of flexibility where I do get to scratch the itch of a totally different side of myself and different interests, and get to be in an environment where I'm not thinking about running, but I'm also not defined by my running, and nobody sees me as a runner really in that environment. So I think I've found a good balance for now. I'm also very open to whatever the future may hold. I don't know how the balance is going to look in the next 4 years, but I think for right now it's working well for me.
Well, I don't know. I commend you 1,000%. And as a bee flies in, Corey's allergic to bees.
I know.
Sketched out. But I commend you 1,000%, and I just find it incredible that you can get to a point where you're so deadlock focused and then not give up, but just pivot. And I think, you know, when I look at you now, like hearing your story and just having this conversation, that to me is something that I think many people, when listening to this, will resonate with very strongly. But more importantly, if they don't, you probably are a great point of inspiration for a lot of individuals that don't realize that they're in a rut. I think the most incredible thing about this conversation so far has been the fact that you've been able to identify where your low points are, which is not easy. You know what I mean? I think like that makes you very, very unique. A lot of people get to a low point and just kind of stay there without realizing it. So how do you do that? How do you know when you're, I mean, it's easy. If you're not performing well, usually you say it's a low, or if you feel depressed, it's usually a low. But I think you've done a beautiful job of not only identifying where your lows are, but systematically putting your life in a place where I'm going to get to where I want to gradually. It's not happening overnight. And you've done that extremely eloquently. So like how? Like, it's my question, right? Like how do you do it with such poise and elegance? Because it's there. Like we didn't really know each other that well before this week, but even in the few conversations I've had with you, it's like you can see there have been struggles, there's been a roller coaster, but you've really done a wonderful job of saying, yeah, it'll be all right. Like, we're gonna figure this out, but it doesn't have to be figured out today. Like how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I think that is how I am the majority of the time, but there are definitely those days where I'm like just freaking out, like I'm failing at everything, and you know, what am I doing with my life, and sort of these big existential crises. Those certainly happen still. So I wouldn't say I have it all figured out, but I think at the core of it is just I think a lot of like introspection, self-awareness, and knowledge of myself and what I need, and kind of confidence in that, and not trying to do what everyone else is doing, yet at the same time I have drawn a lot of inspiration from other runners' stories doing things their way and forging their own paths, and I think that's given me some courage to think about what that would look like for me, and knowing that that's different for everyone else. So I think that's helped a lot, and just this constant desire to self-improve, really, which is like it's just almost daily reflection, I think. Like checking in, like, how am I doing? Like, what's going well? What's not going well? What do I like? What makes me happy? What doesn't make me happy? Is this something that's going to change or not change? And if it's not going to change, what do I need to do to make it change? And sort of those types of questions. I'm always like
awareness,
checking in with myself.
I love that.
Yeah.
Check in every day.
Yeah.
Come back to it.
You know?
All right. Rapid fire. Coke or Pepsi?
Neither. Can't do soda. Can't do bubbles.
I just really thought you were kidding when you said it. Like, that part, I don't know why. Like, even as a kid, you just didn't even, did you have a bad soda?
I just didn't like the taste of carbonation. I just tried it and I was like, I hate these bubbles. They feel like they're prickly on my tongue. And
so you haven't had it since you were a kid, though?
I've had sips here and there. Like, I'll have sips of bubbly water.
I'm going to make you a mocktail.
Yeah.
One strong mocktail.
From the aesthetic, Coke. I like the red.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's my aesthetic.
Pizza or pasta?
Pasta.
That was very definitive.
Yeah.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What kind?
Any espresso.
Okay.
Cappuccinos, lattes.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Red or black?
Red.
Blue or pink?
Blue.
What was your worst injury?
My double Achilles surgery.
Okay. What is your favorite venue? Where's the favorite place you've ever run?
Like stadium or training?
Stadium.
Probably the Berlin Olympic Stadium.
Okay, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
5K or 10K?
5K.
Mile or 15?
15. I typically like longer, but when you're running that hard, I want it to last like not as long.
That's fair. Tempo or threshold?
Threshold.
Speed work or a long run?
Long run.
I feel like I guess that's just who you are.
Speed work is my nemesis.
Cross or track?
Track now.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fair. If you had to go back and tell that high school Santa Cruz Vanessa Fraser what you were going to do years later on the track or in cross country, what would you tell her then? If I had to ask you one word, I'm pretty sure I know what the word you'd say is, but what do you think it is?
One word.
Yeah.
To describe what was going to happen.
Yeah. What would you say to her? What would you, if she's probably dead disciplined, very determined, possibly stressed out about trying to figure out how to make it all come together.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to calm her down?
I mean, it's going to work out. You know, it's going to work out. I think in some ways, like, actually, in every way, it's going to work out probably better than expected.
Fair. I was expecting you to say the word patience and nothing else.
Oh, yeah. That too.
In your both academic and athletic careers, do you think you're just naturally gifted and talented, which I can definitely say that has a lot of merit to it, or do you think you were just very stone hard disciplined? Do you think it's kind of a nature versus nurture question, but if you couldn't run, if you were not good at it, do you still think you would end up being a professional athlete?
No, I think it is really a combination of both.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there's no doubt that I have a great level of talent for sure, but I do not think I'm the most talented runner well, obviously I'm not the most talented runner, but I think that my hard work has taken me farther than maybe my talent would have alone, which I think a lot of people at this level would say.
Yeah.
But I guess there was this age-old debate that we would have with the Bowerman men's team about like the talent ranking on the team, and we tried to like rank the men's team based off of talent, and it's just opinion, but it's not always like who's winning the races.
Well, would that be from youth?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
How their first race ever?
Yeah.
Who ran the fastest?
Yeah.
Give them that. Do you think, from a youth perspective, I coach high school cross country track, and Corey and I had a conversation earlier about how different it is now when every kid can be on a club team. And obviously with media, everything looks real sexy all the time. Do you think it's easier now to get to that upper echelon of just like pro, or do you think it's harder now? Do you think every kid has to fight a little harder because there's so much attention given to everyone that they need more attention? Or do you think it just is what it is?
I imagine it's a lot harder.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I imagine it's a lot harder. There's just access, so much access to everything. And sometimes that can be beneficial, right? Like you have access to what the best athletes in the world are doing, but that's not what you need to be doing when you're in high school. Maybe it works out for some kids, but I think for the most part, that's not what they need to be doing physically, and it's not what they need to be thinking about mentally. Yeah. Like, I think really being focused on yourself and what you're doing and how to get a little bit better, and being really smart about not overdoing it at that age is the most important thing for longevity. And I just feel like that's really hard when you can just see what everyone else is doing. It just propels this hyper competitive cycle that could potentially be negative to someone's development.
I can't even tell you how much I love that. I wish any child, or any person for that matter listening, just listens and hears what a pro's pro has to say there. Last question. I can't think of the date, but we are in June of this year, and you're looking in the mirror at Vanessa Fraser of June 2024, whether we're at the trials or not. What are you saying to that person? If I could put this in a vault and save it and give it to you on that day before you race the trials, or if we're at Paris and you race on the track in Paris, what are you saying to that person?
We've come a long way and we're not done yet.
I love that. Vess, thank you so much. It was wonderful meeting you officially this week and having you meet the team of Team Boss. I say it like I'm a part of Team Boss.
I mean, you basically are
Hey,
at this point.
I will be the honorary member. But no, it's been a wonderful experience meeting you this week, and I really mean it. Like, I really think you have a unique gift of identifying when your pain points are your pain points and lifting yourself up like no other. I think that is a commendable trait that you have that not a lot of people have. I think no matter what happens this year, no matter what happens next year, no matter if you're racing the marathon tomorrow or not, or if you're going to stay in the 5K for the next 20 years, but I think you have a gift of just lifting yourself up and motivating yourself like no other, and I really do think that's a very commendable trait, but very inspirational. Any
Thank
person
you.
listening to this, I would gladly say, put Vanessa Fraser on your watch list all year. She's already put her mind to it, so whatever else you want to do, whether it's venture capitalism or going back into the neuro realm or just sticking to the Olympic goal, wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Anytime.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're out.
All right.